There are days in baseball where everything seems to click, and then there are nights like this one, when no matter how many chances you get, the result just never comes. That was exactly the story here. The Toronto Blue Jays had opportunities scattered all over the game, moments where it felt like one swing could completely shift the momentum, but that hit never showed up. And when you waste that many chances at this level, it almost always comes back to haunt you. What makes it even more frustrating is the fact that the pitching gave them every possible chance to win. Kevin Gausman stepped onto the mound and delivered another performance that should have been more than enough. 6 strong innings, double-digit strikeouts, complete control of the game from start to finish. It didn't matter who was standing in the batter's box. He was locked in. When a pitcher dominates like that, you expect the offense to at least give him some breathing room. Instead, he got almost nothing. And it wasn't like the Blue Jays weren't putting themselves in good positions. They had runners on base multiple times, including some of the most favorable situations you can ask for. Bases loaded with key hitters coming up, traffic on the bases with less than 2 outs, even a late-game scenario where the top of the lineup had a chance to drive in the tying run. These are the moments where good teams separate themselves, where execution matters more than anything. But inning after inning, the same pattern repeated. A missed swing here, a strikeout there, a ball that just didn't find a gap. It felt like everything was just slightly off. One of the biggest concerns early on has to be the lack of impact from the heart of the lineup. It's still early in the season, no question about that, but you expect your biggest bats to come through in situations like these. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., in particular, is a name that naturally comes up in conversations like this. He's a player who is expected to be a major run producer, someone who changes games with one swing. So far, though, that explosive production just hasn't fully shown itself. There's no panic at this stage, but it's something that starts to stand out when the offense as a whole struggles to deliver. What's interesting is that coming into this stretch, the offense hadn't necessarily been a problem. They had shown flashes, they had put runs on the board, and there was a sense that things were trending in the right direction. But baseball has a way of flipping the script overnight. One day you're putting together solid offensive performances, and the next, you can't seem to buy a big hit. That inconsistency is part of the game, but it doesn't make it any easier to watch when it's happening in real time. Meanwhile, Gausman continues to build a case as one of the most reliable arms in the rotation. When you look at what he's done to start the season, it's not just good, it's historically impressive. Back-to-back outings with elite strikeout numbers and complete command, putting himself in a category that hasn't seen many names over the decades. That kind of consistency is rare, and it highlights just how locked in he is right now. The only thing missing is the support behind him. And that brings up a larger conversation about how pitchers are evaluated. Too often, the focus shifts to wins and losses, as if those numbers tell the full story. But games like this are the perfect example of why that stat can be misleading. A pitcher can dominate for 6 or 7 innings, allow little to no damage, and still walk away without a win simply because the offense couldn't capitalize. On the other hand, a pitcher might have an average outing and still be credited with a victory if the lineup explodes offensively. It's a team game, and sometimes the numbers don't reflect the reality of what happened on the field. As the game moved into the later innings, the tension only grew. Every missed opportunity started to feel heavier. Every runner left on base more costly than the last. By the time extra innings rolled around, it almost felt inevitable that one small mistake would decide everything. And that's exactly what happened. A single moment, one pitch that didn't go as planned, and suddenly the game slipped away. The bullpen situation adds another layer to this discussion. Decisions made in those high-pressure moments can define the outcome. And this was one of those nights where the choices raised some questions. There were other options available, arms that could have been called upon in a critical situation, yet the decision went in a different direction. It's easy to second-guess after the fact, but in a tight game like this, every move is magnified. At the same time, it's important to recognize that the bullpen was put in a difficult position to begin with. When your offense scores just a single run across that many innings, there's virtually no margin for error. One mistake, one well-placed hit from the opposition, and that's all it takes. Even a solid outing can quickly turn into the deciding factor when there's no run support to fall back on. Still, there's something to be said about confidence and timing in those late-game decisions. When a reliever is already struggling to find consistency, throwing him into one of the most high-pressure situations of the game is always going to be a risk. It's not just about the physical execution, but also the mental side of it. Confidence plays a huge role, and when that's not fully there, it can show up in crucial moments. All of this circles back to the same central issue. The offense had multiple chances to put this game away and simply couldn't do it. Whether it was early innings with runners in scoring position or late-game opportunities with the top of the order, the outcome remained the same. One run on the board just isn't going to cut it, especially when your pitching staff is doing everything in its power to keep you in the game. And yet, even in a frustrating loss like this, there are flashes that stand out. Moments that remind you of the potential this team has when things start to come together. Defensive plays that energize the dugout, glimpses of strong pitching depth, and the sense that despite the result, the foundation is there. The challenge now is turning those flashes into consistency, finding a way to capitalize when the opportunities present themselves, because at this level, those chances don't last forever. As the game stretched deeper and deeper, it became impossible to ignore just how much pressure was being placed on every single pitch. When your offense isn't producing, every defensive play matters more, every decision from the dugout carries extra weight, and every at-bat feels like it could be the one that finally breaks the game open. But instead of that breakthrough moment, what unfolded was a slow build of tension that never really paid off for Toronto. One of the biggest talking points coming out of this matchup has to be how the bullpen was managed once Gaussman exited the game. Up to that point, everything had been executed almost perfectly on the mound. The starters had done their job, keeping the opposition quiet and giving the team a real chance to take control. But once you move into the later innings, that's where strategy becomes just as important as execution, and that's where things started to get complicated. There were multiple arms available, multiple paths that could have been taken to navigate those final innings. And when you look back at it, it's hard not to question why certain choices were made over others. In a game that was clearly going to come down to the smallest details, go with a pitcher who has been struggling to find his rhythm in high-pressure situations was always going to be a gamble. Not because he lacks talent, but because confidence and timing are everything in moments like that. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that it didn't feel necessary. There were alternatives sitting right there, pitchers who could have stepped into that moment with a different level of stability. Instead, the decision created a scenario where the margin for error became razor thin. And in extra innings, with a runner already in scoring position, that margin basically disappears entirely. One pitch, one swing, and suddenly the game is out of reach. To be fair, the outcome wasn't solely on that one reliever. That's an important detail that can sometimes get lost when emotions run high after a loss. The reality is that the situation itself was already stacked against him. Extra innings change everything. The automatic runner on second base shifts the entire dynamic, forcing pitchers into high-stress situations immediately. Even a routine sequence can quickly spiral if one thing goes wrong. And that's exactly what happened here. But even with that context, the bigger picture still points back to the earlier innings. Because if the offense had done its job, if even one of those multiple opportunities had turned into a clutch hit, none of this late-game drama would have mattered. That's the harsh truth of baseball. You can analyze bullpen decisions, pitch selection, and defensive alignments all you want, but when a team leaves that many chances on the table, it's going to overshadow everything else. There's also a mental aspect to games like this that can't be ignored. When hitters keep coming up short in key situations, it starts to snowball. You begin pressing at the plate, try to do too much instead of sticking to your approach. Instead of trusting the process, you start chasing pitches, swinging just a fraction too early or too late. And at this level, that tiny difference is the gap between driving in runs and walking back to the dugout empty-handed. At the same time, you have to give credit to the opposing pitching staff. They executed when it mattered most. Every time Toronto looked like they might be building something, there was a pitch on the corner, a well-timed strikeout, or a weakly hit ball that shut it down. That's part of the game, too. Sometimes it's not just about what you're doing wrong, but what the other team is doing right in those crucial moments. Still, when you zoom out and look at the overall performance, the numbers tell a pretty clear story. 10 innings played, minimal runs allowed by your pitching staff, and yet it still results in a loss. That's not a formula that's going to lead to success over the course of a long season. If anything, it highlights just how important it is for the offense to find that consistency sooner rather than later. There were, however, a few bright spots that stood out despite the final result. Defensive plays that shifted momentum, even if only temporarily, and moments of individual brilliance that remind you why this team has so much potential. One play in particular captured that perfectly, a reaction play in the infield that required not just skill, but pure instinct and confidence. It's the kind of moment that sticks with you, even in a tough loss, because it shows what this group is capable of when everything clicks. That confidence is something that seems to be growing in certain areas of the team, especially defensively. The chemistry in the infield, the way players are starting to trust each other, it's becoming more noticeable with each game. Routine plays are being handled cleanly, and even the more difficult chances are being turned into outs with a level of composure that stands out. Over the course of a long season, that kind of defensive reliability can make a huge difference. But again, it all circles back to the same lingering issue. Defense can keep you in games, pitching can give you a chance, but eventually you have to score. And right now, there's a sense that the lineup is still searching for that rhythm. The pieces are there, the talent is undeniable, but the timing just isn't lining up the way it needs to. As the season continues, this is the kind of game that can serve as a wake-up call. Not in a dramatic, overreaction kind of way, but as a reminder of how fine the margins are in baseball. One hit here, one adjustment there, and the entire outcome changes. The challenge now is taking that lesson and turning it into something productive, finding a way to come through in those high-leverage moments when the next opportunity presents itself. Because if there's one thing that's certain, it's that games like this won't be the last time this team is tested. The situations will come up again. Runners will be on base, the pressure will be high, and the outcome will once again come down to execution. The difference moving forward will be whether or not they can rise to that moment and finally deliver when it matters most. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. Whispers are beginning to ripple through the baseball world, and they carry a name that rarely goes unnoticed: Shohei Otani. The two-way superstar, long seen as the centerpiece of the Los Angeles Dodgers' present and future, is now at the heart of a growing storm of speculation. According to insiders, a rival franchise has quietly positioned itself with a staggering financial offer, one that could test even the strongest loyalties. While no official confirmation has surfaced, the mere possibility has ignited debate across clubhouses and front offices alike. Otani's unique ability to dominate both on the mound and at the plate has made him not just a generational talent, but a once-in-a-century asset. Losing such a figure would not simply be a roster change for the Dodgers. It would represent a seismic shift in the balance of power across the league. Sources close to the situation suggest the offer goes beyond traditional contract structures, potentially including long-term incentives and unprecedented flexibility designed to appeal to Otani's dual-role ambitions. For a player who has consistently redefined expectations, the idea of a franchise building an entire system around his versatility could be as tempting as the financial figures themselves. Still, questions remain about how serious the situation truly is. The Dodgers are unlikely to stand idle if there is even a hint of Otani's departure becoming reality. Internally, there is confidence, even calm, that their relationship with the star remains strong. Yet in professional sports, confidence can quickly turn into urgency when rival teams sense an opening. Fans, meanwhile, are left reading between the lines. Social media has become a breeding ground for theories, ranging from strategic leverage to genuine exit plans. Is this a calculated move to reshape negotiations, or the first sign of an unexpected farewell? For now, nothing is certain, except that the mere suggestion of Otani wearing another uniform is enough to send shockwaves through the sport. And until clarity emerges, the rumor mill will continue to spin, fueled by the tantalizing possibility that one of baseball's brightest stars could be on the verge of a stunning new chapter. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.